I'm Jason Sylvia, and this is the Creative Capital Show. A show about creative people and how those creative people turn into entrepreneurs by taking their creativity and turning it into a business and facing all the trials and tribulations along the way. Imagine growing up wanting to be a chef, but then at 12 you realize you need to make money, so you decide to major in food science. Now imagine you're in grad school, and you realize you hate being in labs. Oh, and your school loses your research grant. So then you find a job in collegiate athletics administration, and turns out you love it. But then your mother has a stroke, so you take a sabbatical. Next, you try to get back into that career by working for a new school in an area where no one looks like you and no one shares your experiences. But instead of leaving, you decide to start a business around tea. Believe it or not, this is the real life story of Amber Jackson and the Black Leaf Tea and Culture Shop, a business that shares a love for tea, engages with the community, and celebrates Black culture. Now, while this is a story about tea, business, and creating your own community, it's also about alignment, being open to fate putting you on the right path, and finally, mastering the art of the pivot. Enjoy. For those that somehow don't know who you are or what your business is, what would be like the elevator pitch for... You're already laughing.
Because it assumed that everyone just knows me. I'm like, I promise you I'm not there.
I would think so, but hey.
Sure. So my name is Amber Jackson. I am the owner and operator of the Black Leaf Tea and Culture Shop, which is an online loose leaf tea and herbal company. I also use my platform to celebrate Black culture and engage the community through programming such as a monthly Young Black Professionals event and also a conversation series called Tea Talk, which also, breaking news, we are looking to convert to a podcast.
If you need help with that, let me know.
I do. Thank you.
So thank you for that. And I think you're already well known. Hence why we're doing this episode. Mm-hmm. Not that if you weren't well known, we wouldn't be doing the episode anyway. But
oh no, gas me up. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I'm just saying. So tea. Mm-hmm. Doing the research for this episode, tea. It seemed like it was something that was within your family for a long time. It didn't seem like, oh, hey, I'm going to start this business and like tea, that's the ticket. Like it seemed like tea was something from like way back in the day with like your mom and your grandma growing up. Can you go in a little bit of like just the significance of tea like within your like you growing up and within your family?
Yeah. So for me, just a little background about my family. So I am from Chicago, born and raised Southside Chicago in Inglewood. My family that I know of is from Nashville and New Orleans. And so, growing up, like gardening and more holistic and natural things were always a part of my life. And so I always grew up drinking tea. It wasn't like my kind of tea with loose leaf. It was definitely like Celestial and Lipton and Bigelow. But it was definitely a situation where, if you weren't feeling well, you would just drink some tea and take a nap. But even for me, I've always loved the flavors and the versatility of it. And so, it was something like normal for me. Like, Southern households, you always had something cold to drink. So iced tea would be in the pitcher in the fridge for, any guests that may come over. My family was the church family. So my grandmother was the secretary at the church. My mother was the lead soloist. Everyone was in the choir. And so, any given Sunday, Reverend Price and his wife would come over for Sunday dinner or something like that. So you have things. And we always, in the summertime, always had like iced tea in the fridge. Academically, my background is in food science. And so my bachelor's is in nutrition and food science. And in grad school, I studied food science, concentrating in product development. So all of that is kind of how I got to creating my business, which ironically was not initially supposed to be loose leaf tea. It was supposed to be a sweet tea and cheesecake company. Yeah.
And I was wondering, what was the reasoning? We're going to bounce around a little bit here, folks. It's going to be like a Tarantino movie. That's not going to be linear. What was the reasoning? Because I was reading like, oh, it's supposed to be like sweet tea and cheesecakes. What made you go, yeah, and then no? Like, nope, I'm going to pivot to this other thing.
That's just expensive. Like,
so it's just purely money.
So honestly, it was just like, well, for one, like, yeah, the tea itself, like, that wasn't super crazy, but like, the ingredients for the type of cheesecakes that I like to make is expensive. Like, even just now, like, of course, everything's super like inflated now, but even in general, like, it's expensive, and not just like the ingredients of its on its own, but also refrigeration, the actually baking of it, the storage, also understanding like. I think Rhode Island and New Jersey are the only two states where you cannot own and operate a food and beverage business from home. I do know that the cottage bill is on deck now, so that could be changing within this coming year. But even that, like, I have to pay to use a health department approved facility, and so all that together, it's just cost wise, it's too much. But even then, just like, you know, I'm very good with flavor. So for me, I do consider myself a creative, where in the aspect I don't do like music or I guess a different medium of art. But for me, flavor is my creative avenue. And so I get to have really a lot of fun with this. And so I use my background and my knowledge of food and herbs and the bioavailability of certain products and ingredients to actually create products that are unique in flavor. They're delicious, also functional as well. And so I get to create a dry packaged product. Also understanding that tea is the second most consumed beverage in the world after water. So with that, having a packaged, dry, lightweight product that can ship across the world, it releases any kind of like boundaries of potential that I would have had.
So wanted to backtrack with the family history with tea, and you were saying that you studied food and nutrition, like the science behind like food, and also like the food product development.
Yeah.
What was that because of the family background? Like, what led to you wanting to pursue that as like your field of study? Like, yeah, this is what I want to learn and this is what I want to be about.
Yeah. So actually, initially, once again, I've pivoted a lot in my life. I initially wanted to be a chef. And I remember I used to read a bit when I was younger. And I remember like reading articles saying about how competitive the culinary space was, and even at 12 I realized like, oh, I have to have a job.
And also like restaurant margins are like razor thin.
Yes. And so like for me, like in my mind, I wanted to be able to create. I wanted to play with food and make new items. And so I was like, you know what, being a chef may not be best for me, but I used to love watching Good Eats on Food Network by Alton Brown. And so that in itself is a food science show. It's
also a very entertaining show.
Yes. And so I was like, you know what? I think I want to be a food scientist, where I get to I want to do what he does. I want to be in the kitchen and playing around with food and actually breaking things down. And that's how I kind of got from culinary arts to food science. So it wasn't really a family thing, but it was more so, you know, even then at 12, deciding my major at 12, like I need to make money while also potentially enjoying what I do.
So you may not have necessarily been an entrepreneur at a young age, but at a young age you were like, I need some profit. I need to make some dollars.
But also, like, once again, I'm from Southside Chicago, so like you grew up in a neighborhood where most people don't have much, like everyone's struggling. And so you don't want to add to be a person that's also struggling, and also understanding even that I can, you know, I have eyes, I can see what's around me. I'm aware of the sacrifices and even though growing up in the hood, I still acknowledge that I had a lot of privilege because of my immediate household. So I grew up in the house with my grandmother, my great grandmother, my mom, and my aunt. And from there, I had a lot of structure. And so I had a lot of structure. I had a lot of, even just the simple fact that my family had a car. Like we were able, there's no grocery stores in my neighborhood. It is now. But growing up, there's not a single grocery store in my neighborhood. So I did grow up in a food desert. But I had a garden in my backyard every single spring and summer. So I can just go to the backyard.
I was just about to ask about the garden.
Yeah. So that was, once again, my family's from down south. So a lot of things that they brought with them was just knowledge of how to do these things. And so if you ever like read A Raisin in the Sun?
Yeah.
So
Yep,
that
I've
kind
heard
of
it.
neighborhood, of course, it's Inglewood. It's Southside Chicago. So like a lot of my neighbors also came from down south. And so us and my neighbors with the Glovers, a much older black couple also, they also had a garden. So we used to like
Are you doing like vegetable trading or food trading?
food
Something like that?
trading, even just Sunday dinners. Like they were older couples. So my grandmother would always make a plate for Mr. and Mrs. Glover and have one of us walk over to their house and drop it off to them. So it was very like neighborly kind of situation. And so things changed later on. People started like leaving the neighborhood, or they just like, got older and passed away. But even just because, like I said, in my household, it was like I was privileged to have a situation where everyone had a car. We can go to other neighborhoods and fill up our fridge. I had privilege of having a household where we had a nutritiously dense market in my backyard. I was privileged to have grown up in a house where I had structure because everyone was a teacher. So I think, yeah, I think I had a lot of people like really pushing me to be successful. And so even from there, I did not want to be one that was not. And so it's like, you have to figure this out. How are you going to make money so that you're not struggling like everyone else?
Those things that you just mentioned, did that also lead to you wanting to, because I was reading an interview of yours, that you really wanted to understand the nutritional aspects of food and like the process of how food is developed and how it gets to, basically how it gets to like your plate, right? Or how it gets to like the cup. Were those factors of growing up, did that also contribute to like you wanting to have that full understanding? Like I want to know like every little detail type of understanding?
Honestly, no, it was coincidental. So like for me, I solely wanted to focus on food science and creating new products. I ended up in a nutrition program in undergrad because I was a full scholarship athlete. And so I had a lot of offers. Most schools do not have a food science program.
Was this at Middle Tennessee State University?
Yeah. So from there, they have a nutrition and food science program, but it's more heavily on the nutrition side rather than food science. And so of my options, well, one, first and foremost, I want to get as far away as possible. I did not want to take any of my SEC conference offers because I didn't want to go pro, because even at that time, I was exhausted.
And you said you were an athlete. What was your sport?
I ran track. So,
okay.
Yeah. I was a 400, 800 lead leg 4x4 runner.
And you didn't want to go pro. You were just like, nope.
So literally my senior year in high school, my mom I had a lot of offers, and my mom had to sit me down and was like, look, I am incredibly proud of you. We can't afford this. So you're going to take one of these offers and we're going to figure it out and we're going to make it work. But that was the biggest thing. It's like finding the school that had the program that worked best for me. And one of the schools that would have been perfect for me, one, it was in state. So I was already kind of like, I don't like this. But the coach, she's the reason why I didn't go. So my mom, I think she called her like during the day. My mom was at work and she was like, hey, I'm at work. So, either email me or call me. We can schedule a time to talk later. And I think it happened 2 more times when she called my mom at work. And my mindset is, if you cannot be respectful of my mother, there's nothing within me to make me believe that you respect me as
that's
your
not going to go
athlete.
down well.
Absolutely not.
Like, yeah.
And especially like this group, my parents are divorced. I grew up in a single parent household. And so respecting my mother is a very clear sign for me of how you're going to treat me. And so like something like that, I think that even in the sense of recruiting, you still have to work with a sense of integrity. And so, but that program would have been, they have an actual food science program. It's a Big Ten school. So I would have been more than taken care of. But what was that? And also they wanted to, one of the, I can't say a benefit of being poor, but I did get full Pell Grant. And what they wanted to do was take some of my money to go towards a scholarship for someone else. I'm like, that's my money.
Wait, what?
Exactly. Exactly. So hell no. But also, I'm just like, this is 2009. I graduated from high school. So things are like, then it was vastly different from what it is now.
I was going to say, this was the time of the big economic fallout of the whole housing crisis and all that stuff. If I have my timelines correct.
I want to say yes, but even then it's just like, ethically, you have this
girl. I mean, even more so. I'm just saying you have all that going on just in the world in general. And then you have this woman or this person, I should say, who's like hey, I don't respect your mom, and we're going to take your money and give it to
your
somebody
money
else.
that you
What?
get because you don't have any kind of financial backing, and we're going to take and make sure so it can go towards someone else's scholarship, so we don't have to pay out of pocket for someone else's scholarship. I don't know how you expect me to pay for food or clothing while I'm in school. Like, once it gets to 2009, it's much different now. Like, it's very different now, but that was an absolute no. So for me, my decision of where I chose to go to school wrapped around heavily in where I'd be taken care of, but also get the program closest to what I want. But I can go in 4 years, have everything paid for. Like, I got still like it was still, like, MTSU is the largest undergrad in Tennessee, so it's still a very big school. The schedule that we had was still very competitive. I got to possibly, be a bigger fish in a smaller pond, but it's still like it's a decent size, it's like a very competitive conference also.
So you go, you choose the first school, which was Middle Tennessee State University,
Mm-hmm.
and then you go to grad school, which was Alabama A&M.
Yes, that is my HBCU.
So you and that was where you got your
amateur grad, yeah,
your master's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Still studying food science and food product development. Was the plan always, as you were in school, to start your own business, or was the plan like, hey, I'm going to study this stuff and go work for like a giant food company? Like, what was the plan? Because you were like, hey, I got to pick a thing that's going to make money very early on at 12. So what was the plan? Was the plan, hey, I'm going to eventually start my own business, or hey, I'm going to go work for a bigger company?
Not at all. I never really saw myself as an entrepreneur. My dream job was to be a food scientist, a product development scientist at General Mills. I enjoyed the products. I really respected this is so weird to think about it now, their social responsibility that they had. I wanted to work as a product development scientist for General Mills. But it wasn't until my second year in grad school, and I was almost done with my thesis, I realized, like, oh, I should have been a corporate chef working in a test kitchen, because I learned that I hate being in labs because it's very secluded. I'm in there by myself. Like, I'm not the most extroverted person in the world, but I do enjoy, like, being around people.
You could have fooled me with that one. I mean,
I think my breaking point was, I think it was my second year in grad school, and I just went to my lab at like 3 a.m, and I just sat there and cried. Like, I was miserable. I hated it, and it was kind of shitty because it's like I picked this when I was 12, and I just stuck it out, and here I am at, I think it was 22 at the time, and I was miserable.
So you come to that realization.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what? There's a couple of realizations I want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what had you pivot, or what led you to Brown?
No. So
okay.
once again, it's everything. I would say this, like, alignment has been almost divine in my life. Like, I can literally pinpoint how point A got to point B, got to point C. It was very, like, pinpointed.
Yeah, because I'm interested in how you went from, like, those schools and then to Brown. And I also want to talk about the experience of Brown, because that is really, at least from, doing my research, to me, the turning point and the starting point of how, like, the business starts.
Yeah.
But how did you go from, so you're at the school, you, and I think you had a nickname growing up that I read about, Slow and Steady. From your family, because you said you were a picky eater, which I want to talk about that later when it comes to food experience.
So I'm not a picky eater.
Not a picky eater. You love the experience of eating and food.
So
sorry, not to say picky eater. You take your time, which I mean, hey, like, that led to this. So
to this day, my mom will look at the table. She just look at me like, slow and steady. I just take my time.
I'm just glad you laughed. I got my Nardwuar moment for the episode.
But no, it was So yeah, so basically how I got from food science to athletics. It's strange. Even as an athlete, I never considered going into collegiate athletics as on the professional side, on the admin side. So I would say that my second year in grad school, I never had the full story of this, but my school lost my research grant. And of course, as a grad student, like my GA is how I like pay my bills. And so my friend Jasper, he worked in athletics, and he was like, oh, hey, you are a former D1 athlete. Come over here and just interview with Dr. Miles and see how it goes. So I interviewed with her. I got the job, and I started working in athletics, and I loved it. And my second year with them, the SWAC, so the Southwest Athletic Conference, is one of the larger, it's a SWAC and MEAC, like the two largest HBCU athletic conferences. And so A&M is in the SWAC. And so they allowed us to host the Outdoor Track and Field Championship in 2015, which they never do. So they usually host it at like a private institution. And as a GA, that became my job, to coordinate a championship. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to coordinate collegiate championships. And so I loved it. And I got to coordinate it from top to bottom. I was the on-site meet coordinator, and I got to do it again for 2016. Ironically, I did come to Providence once when I was in grad school, because I interviewed for the fellowship position at the American Athletic Conference, which was here in Providence. And so I made it to the top 4. I didn't get it, but they flew me out for my second interview. And that was actually my very first time coming to Providence. I stayed at, what's the hotel called? It's the Graduate now. The Biltmore. Yeah. It was a Biltmore when I came. And that was in that was 2015. I think I came, and didn't get the job. And so I came back. My sophomore, was it my sophomore? Yeah, I think my freshman year in college, actually, my mom had a stroke. And so this is years and years later. So when I was done at grad school, she has a very mom habit of telling me things like 3 months after they happen. And so when I was in Alabama,
and you freak out, and you're just like,
exactly.
Oh, sorry, and you're like, what the hell?
Yes. And so she finally told me, like, she started having these head pains. And at that time, I was gone. My brother's also at the house, so she was living alone. And so I wanted to come home to just be with her, just make sure she's good. And so while I was home, I moved home to Chicago for about 1.5 years. And then when I got to the point where, she's good, I'm good, she's tired of me, I'm tired of her, like, bet, I can leave again. But the thing is, once you leave collegiate athletics that early in your career, it's extremely hard to get back in. And so me taking the job at Brown was really just supposed to be my way back in. And also because I had already interviewed, I knew some people at the American Athletic Conference. I was like, cool, I can just volunteer and do some work with them while I'm here. And so when I got the job at Brown, like, that's pretty much how I got here. It's just like me getting back into athletics.
So you had one revelation, which was you found out you hated being in labs.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You thought you were on one path. Then you had the other revelation. Oh, I really like coordinating championships. You get into like the admin side of like collegiate athletics,
yeah.
Right? And then you come to Brown.
Yep.
Trying to get back into that game.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to reference a quote here because I think this is an important turning point, which is this. So you stated that, your world was all black in Chicago, and even after leaving the South Side of Chicago, in the colleges that you were at before you went and worked at Brown, your world was all black. Then you came to... Oh, no, sorry, no. If you want to...
No, MTSU
if I got the quote wrong, let me know.
No, you're fine. No, MTSU is a PWI. So it's predominantly white institution. So MTSU is the largest undergrad in Tennessee. So it's very diverse, but I can still easily see people like me there. It wasn't like,
So it's interesting you say that.
Yeah.
Not to cut you off. Because then you get to Brown, and you come to another revelation, and you were expecting the population at Brown and in Providence to be less diverse. Mm-hmm. And then you arrive, and it's, I guess, even worse than what you expected.
It's really white.
And you were, just a couple of quotes here from another interview, which I thought was really interesting, is that, you'd have coworkers and friends take you out, and, there was a lot of times where you were the only person of color in the room and the only female person of color in the room.
Yeah.
just going through that experience, and I'm not like, you don't have to like completely relive it, but I think that's kind of like a revelation in and of itself, where you end up like, somebody ends up in a new place and it's like, wow, no one looks like me.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to relate experiences to anybody? Like, what was that like? Because I think that's an important turning point, which will lead into the business part later on.
And so first and foremost, being from Chicago, going to school down south, the Urban League is very active in all those places. And so,
I was just about to ask what the Urban League is and why isn't it not here in Rhode Island?
Yeah, so the Urban League is a Black nonprofit organization. They have a lot of development work, political work as well in the Black community. There's really empowering of the Black community and the Black youth as well. And one of the sub-programs of the Urban League is the Young Black Professionals. So no matter, like, Providence is the third city I've lived in by myself, so I have no issue just up and moving by myself. That's not a thing for me. But I've always been able to just like find the Young Black Professionals or find people that look like me, just because they have, after work mixers, they have different programming. So whenever I go places, I can easily like make myself welcome. However, the Urban League in Rhode Island is inactive. To my understanding, there were some things that happened in the past, like well before I moved here, and they just never recovered. To my understanding, there has been some work in trying to revive it. I don't know where they're at with it right now, to be honest, but I know that there has been some attempts to revive it. I know that there's the one in Boston is incredibly active, but I am not driving an hour to be around people that look like me, to have programming. And so like you said, when I first moved here, my coworker, she was also my roommate, so shout out to Kat. Ironically, the very first place we went to was actually one of my wholesalers. It's a Bayberry Beer Hall, and beautiful place, loved it. But I'd quickly realized that I was the only Black person in the entire room, and it was crowded too. This is like after work kind of thing, and no one ever like that. I will say this also, like, no one's ever made me feel uncomfortable. But I will say, once you've clocked it, it's very hard to get out of the mindset like it's just you, especially when you're not used to it being just you in a social space. Like in the MTSU is classes, like I have classes like 200, 300 people, and they'd be like, and I'm a STEM major also. So at that time, there wasn't too many of us in my classes. But like in a social space, it's very hard to get out of that mindset of just like, it's just you in here.
It's like once you notice it, it's like, how are you not going to notice it?
Yeah,
after?
And it is uncomfortable, but not just at bars and restaurants. You go to, like doctor's offices, dental offices. Like for me, especially as a Black woman, it's like, okay, where do I go to get my hair done? My nails, like a dermatologist, like are there any Black dermatologists, like things like that. I think when employers, especially if you have large employers like Brown or CVS, who's also here, like these things should be taken into consideration when you are attempting to bring in a more, I guess, diverse panel of new employees, specifically Black, because that's my experience. But there are some things that are culturally imperative to our comfortability as Black people. So like, yeah, I know for me, like I struggled finding someone to do my hair. I locked my hair after moving here because I couldn't find someone to do my hair.
I was gonna ask, did that change as you were exploring the city more, or is that like we were just consistently running into that?
Here's the thing. So not to down nobody, y'all gonna be in my DMs after this. I know you are. I will highlight again, I am from Chicago. I went to school in the South. We do hair. Y'all don't do hair like that here. And that is hard for me.
I'm only laughing at this because I'm the son of a barber. So.
And so it's like, I've seen, I will say in the past couple of years, I've seen better work, but it is not even comparable to the experiences that I've had and the other places that I've lived. However, like, yeah, I locked my hair. Like my loctician, Rebecca, a stylistic in Boston, is impeccable. And so I did not plan on locking my hair this early. I'm glad I did. I love it. But it was not my plan to do so. So even now, I've been here for 4 years, just finding someone to do my hair, my nails. I mean, it's been a challenge. It's definitely, I think more of an effort now. So even like before I left Brown during the pandemic, they formed the Black Women at Brown affinity group, and we just meet on Zoom. But we talk about that also. It's just like, where do I go? I'm new to Brown. Like, where do I go?
So it's not even just social. It seems like there was a lack or there was or is, depending on how you're looking at it from a timeline perspective, not just from a social, like going to like bars and spots and things like that, but also it seems like a lack of infrastructure, because you were saying like the urban league's not here, and like you're trying to find like professional groups, and those groups were not here. So it seems like almost like an infrastructure lack as well.
In some ways, like, don't get me wrong, like, there are things here. You just have to put an effort into actually finding them.
I got some questions about that later, actually. That leads into some other stuff.
Okay.
So, all right, you come to that revelation, and so here's the question: what made you want to stay? Because you have like what made you like this is not the greatest situation in the world, and you decide to stay, and you decide to start a business, which is great. But I'm just like wondering, like, what made you want to stay?
So okay, I stayed for now. I honestly don't see me staying here.
I mean, stayed from like as far as from the situation, like run into that situation, like, hey, I'm gonna stay here for a bit.
I think, well, initially me coming to Brown was only supposed to be a 2-year plan.
Gotcha.
But then when I started my business 1.5 years, and it's like, well, I need my business to become stable before I move on anywhere else. Just because like structurally, even now it's still just me, but structurally, you know, making sure I at least have some kind of systems in place. Doing the markets have been really helpful of like getting an idea of who my actual audience is, who my actual customers are. And so for me, I stayed a little longer, this long, I guess, really just because I really want to make sure that my business became stable. And so for me, longevity and legitimacy has always been a priority for me. So even at the gate, like, my business has been an LLC since conception, and my lawyer actually did a package deal for me. So we did my LLC and my trademark together. So federally, the name, the Black Leaf Tea and Culture Shop, actually belongs to me.
I've got questions about that too. So what was the moment in like the moment and the why of like, you know what, all this stuff going on, doing this athletic admin work, I'm gonna start a business. And it's going to be a tea business. Like, was there a specific moment? Was something that was like ruminating? Was there a need that you saw? Like, what in your mind were like, going to start a business, and it's going to be a tea business, not the tea and cheesecake. We already talked about that, but hey, it's going to be a tea business.
But first and foremost, I don't work there no more, so it don't matter. I hated my job, so it was not what I wanted at all. Like I said, it was just supposed to be my way back in, but I managed the travel of 38 collegiate athletic teams by myself. Their bills.
It's a lot of teams.
Yeah, so Brown had, I don't know if we still have, but we had the 3rd largest athletic department in the entire country. So that was, it's a lot of work. I was not being paid well anywhere near what I should have been paid at all. So even then in my mind, it was like, okay, I can start a business. One, I think for me, I desperately needed something that I enjoyed doing. I didn't like my job. I hated my roommates at home also. It's just like, I need some sense of something that belongs to me, that I can create the sense of joy that is truly mine, and I have control over it.
And the thing that seemed to give you creative joy and a creative outlet, it was mixing flavors together, yes, and the experience of food.
Yeah.
As your nickname from childhood suggests.
But yeah, as for me, like I've always loved cooking. I've always loved being in kitchen spaces. I've always loved like learning about new techniques. I've always loved exploring new flavors. So like for me, a good time for me is like going to a new restaurant and bar and just telling like the bartender, like, make me whatever you want. If it's like not on the menu, like, make me your best, and just go from there. Like I love exploring food and different flavors.
Like it should be an experience.
Food, yes, food, flavor should be an experience. And so that's why I get so offended by people like scarfing down their food. It's like, what? You can't taste it.
I think there's an Italian saying where, I forgot where I heard this, but there was like an old Italian grandma. It's not like a folklore thing. I just remember hearing this in a documentary where she's like, yeah, like the Italians, like we eat and we enjoy the food and we enjoy the flavor. She's like, you Americans eat like sharks, where you're just always like mouth open, just consuming everything in front of you and not even paying attention to it.
Yes. And so I think, and that's even a part of my brand of, you know, having a tea company, it's the stillness of it. Is that taking that moment to actually like be still and take a pause. And so I think that for me, I've been able to translate that into the full brand of the Black Leaf Tea and Culture Shop.
And so you have this, you know, you're like, hey, I like this food experience. I like creating different flavors. You're like, I need a creative outlet before I lose my shit, it seems like.
And I started therapy because I came very, very close.
And so you're like, okay, I'm gonna do this thing. One, how'd you come up with the name Black Leaf Tea Company? And then what were some of the first steps that maybe that you didn't take but you thought you needed to take?
Yeah, honestly, there is no deep meaning behind the name.
Okay.
And I kind of, even now, people like, the name's kind of long, I was like, but it does encompass all that it does and all that I do. But just the Black Leaf, because like I'm Black, but it kind of backfires a little. People like, oh, it's all Black tea. And it's like, no. It's like, what says Black tea looks like? That's not what that says. It says the Black Leaf Tea and Culture Shop. But no, I think for me, it was just like, it was very hard to think of a name that would just really encompass everything that I do. And this really, it does. It is a tea and culture shop, the Black Leaf, just being something different. And what was the other question? Sorry.
Oh, what were some of the first steps that you either took or you thought you needed to take?
Yes. Okay. So yes. So like I said, for me, longevity and legitimacy was a priority for me. And so first and foremost, finding a location to work out of, because just doing some research, learning that I cannot do this from my home.
Yeah, you were saying before the legal hurdle of like you can't do it out of your house. So you have to find a spot to do it in. And
do so fiscally as well, because it's those kitchen spaces, like it's not cheap at all. Let me see. And so I did a food business cohort at Hope in Maine, which is the food incubator that I operate out of in Warren.
And did you just find them just through research? Like you were just on Google, like searching for stuff? Or?
They were honestly second on my list. The first place I wanted to work out of, because it's actually in Providence, is I think it was called Foodworks. It was in
was that like a shared kitchen type space thing going on?
Yeah, it was in Room and Works, the loft building where Need Donuts is. I think it's Live Long Beer. Is there also?
Oh yeah, because there's like two. So for those who don't know Providence geography, there's two large like factory type buildings, and I know Roomworks is like a co-working space. There's also apartments there, and then Long Live Beer Works was there. Far West was there. Rest in peace to Far West. It's a great bar.
Yeah.
So they had a kitchen thing going on?
Yeah. So ironically, Michelle from Far West she was the manager of it. And so she showed me around there. And that's how I first met Michelle. Crazy thing was, I think it was a week or 2 weeks after they closed. So I was like, okay, where do I go? And I think Michelle was the one that told me about Hope in Maine. She says further out, but they have a lot of space and they do a lot of in-house work. So like I got to do the cohort at Hope in Maine. They have the Servsa Certification there as well. They
Can you go over just really quickly what Servsa is in case anybody doesn't know?
Yes, so it's a certification you have to have in regards to serving food or beverage. At least one person. So when I'm working in the operationally packing like with the teas, like at least one person with a Servsa certification has to be present. It's honestly just things you should be doing, proper storage, temperatures, washing your hands, basic things that you should know, like working in a kitchen space, you cannot use latex gloves. It has to be vinyl. But it's just really making sure that you are not, potentially killing someone when you serve them food.
So you get to Hope in Maine. They have the shared kitchen space and they have the Serve Safe certification. So 2 questions on that. One, how important do you think it is for places like Hope in Maine to not only exist, because it definitely has helped you out, right? But also, because like there's one thing I've noticed is that like I've talked to other people on this show and just other people in general, and they talk about how like they find these organizations that can help them out with their business, but it wasn't easy finding them. Like it was almost like this crazy hurdle. And I'm like, why do these organizations that exist to help people or like these grants that can help out or whatever, yet they're hard to find, or the application process is like long and complicated? And so was that the same for you? And like, why do you think that is? And do you think it's important that these organizations need maybe to promote themselves more or have better outreach?
Yeah.
Because it always seems like this crazy task. And I'm like, well, it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of that came to light earlier in the pandemic. So like the case of, well, first and foremost, Hope in Maine, yes, I think it is imperative for like food and beverage businesses because 1, it gives you a space. 2, there's a lot of opportunities with working with them. So even the first news article I was ever in was the Providence Journal. And I was invited to do I think it's the Reader's Choice Food and Beverage Awards ceremony. And I got to go because I was with Hope in Maine. So they invited, I think, 4 or 5 of us to come. And so they just asked me, like, hey, do you want to do this? I said, sure. I had one of my iced teas there. So I'm actually planning on bottling very soon also. And I got a lot of traction from that. And I actually met Gail Chiampa in person there. And so she is the food editor of the Providence Journal. And so you do also get to be in certain rooms that you may not be in if you were not a part of Hope in Maine
or not associated with that organization.
Yeah. So it does get, as far as marketing wise, like, yeah, there's a lot of things that come along with it. Even just learning how to do things. So when I was first like looking for like a tea leaf wholesaler, because like I can't afford to go to China, Japan, and Taiwan. It's like go there in person. Like I can't afford it. And so I was like, yeah, I'm having a hard time finding a tea wholesaler. And Luca works at Hope in Maine. He's like, oh, we have one in house. And I was like, oh, okay. So just even opening my mouth and just asking for certain things. And so that's how I got in touch with Michelle Chang, who is the owner of Leafy Green Tea and Ceremony Tea, which is on Brown's campus. And so she sources directly from China, Japan, and Taiwan. So I work with her for my tea leaves.
And would you consider her a mentor?
In a way, yeah. Like I've learned a lot from her. She's always making herself available to me. It's like, if you need anything, let me know. I actually did ask about going on one of her tours with her. Like, when you go, like, can I go? And she said, yeah, I haven't done it yet, but she's like, yeah, definitely whenever you're ready. But she is phenomenal to work with. I just heard her knowledge of the tea leaves, the farming of it itself, the processing of it. Just having that firsthand experience that I don't have. She's been great to work with.
So you have this infrastructure in place of you have like a mentor somewhat that you're working with. You also have Hope in Maine that's providing a number of services, right? Mm-hmm. From the kitchen to being able to source ingredients.
Mm-hmm. Even finding my lawyer. They linked me with him.
I was going to say legal and business help.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to talk about money because these things cost money.
Yes.
How did you fund all of this?
Initially, it was just out of pocket. And then...
like cashing in life savings or?
I had not a crazy... So for instance, like the amount of great ingredients just to like start, I just got a box of stuff and just started playing around with it. I had money from like work. So my like income from work. I think it was that December before I launched in April. I was just talking to my mom and she was just like, I got really passionate about what I wanted to do. How I did the cohort already. And so she was just like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you $5,000 to start with. Now, once again, please do not think I'm rich. My mother is a single parent. So she's simply not taking care of 2 kids by herself anymore. So it saves a lot of money. But she was just like, I'm going to give you $5,000. And in a very Black motherly fashion, she said, don't waste my money. And so I chose to use that money for like my legal fees. So I work with Alex Chiuli at Barton Gilman. And like I said, we did a package deal for my trademark and my LLC. And from there,
can you briefly describe, just for the people that don't know, trademark and what an LLC is, and why an LLC? Because I think that's important versus
Yes.
sole proprietorship and that kind of stuff.
So you do get a bit of more protection as a business with LLC.
Like they can't come after your personal assets.
Yes. So I will talk about that. Actually, I'm recently like learning now there's actually levels to that. So there's one way a lot of like larger brand businesses, they have their business like an S Corp, C Corp, whatever, but they also have it set up as a trust. So even though you're not suing their business, you're suing the trust.
So you can't even go after the business assets as well. So it's like, there's plenty of loopholes.
There are many, many loopholes, which I'm learning now. But I have an LLC because I'm just starting off. And also, I'm not at the fiscal level to switch over to an S Corp or a C Corp yet because I'm like waiting to hit that very close to the 100K mark, but we're not there yet, being 2 years in the business. But the LLC provides a certain level of protection, and also you need to register your business. And so unfortunately, if you are not registered as a business, you are not eligible for many grants. You're not eligible for any kind of loan at all because
and tax benefits and things like that.
Yes. I will say, even as an LLC, I'm learning. I'm like, once again, my background's in science, not business, so I'm still learning a lot of this. And I was kind of upset because last year, I made a lot more money than I had in the past as a business, and so because I was still working at Brown, I was like, why is my refund so much less? It's like, well, they counted whatever was left over as income. It's like, but I've never paid myself for my business. It's like, well, they still count it as income. I was like, I never paid myself. I was like, why is why is my refund so short? But it's very interesting how that all works out. But either way, it is, for me, it was important to be a legitimate business off the bat, because also a lot of business grants and loans, you have to be in business for a certain amount of years. And if you are not registered as a business, you are not recognized as a business.
I was going to ask, like, why not? Because some people, they just start doing the stuff out of their house and they're like, let me just get things going. Let me just do what I like. Let me make some money under the table. And then they figure the business stuff out after. But you, even like you were saying, you didn't have the business background, but so was that the reasoning behind, like, I need to get this business stuff first? Or was that like the advisement of Hope and Main be like, no, you need to get this stuff done first before you make the first TMT box or whatever? That was
me. And I was really just like, gotcha. Because like I said, I think for me, like longevity and also having that practice in place. But even with, actually, I take that back. So yes, working at Hope and Main, you do have to register as a business because you also have to have food business insurance. And so you cannot have business insurance if you're not an actual business. So having your EIN number, so your federal EIN number, so kind of like a social security number for your business.
For your business.
Yeah.
That way you can have the business be the identity rather than you being the identity.
Yep. And so, you have to have these things to have your business insurance. And so I believe with Hope and Main, you have to have a policy minimum of like $2 million. But once again, having a food beverage business is extremely risky. You're creating something that other people are consuming. So that's a huge risk.
I was going to say, like, what were, and so these legal things, was that more informed, or were you finding that out strictly from Hope and Main, or were you doing your own research, trying to, like, was it more of like a cover your ass thing? Like, hey, I'm doing a food thing. Like, I might get sued. Like,
I think I was knowledgeable of the LLC and the trademark aspect of it and the copywriting. I was not very, very knowledgeable of like the
food safety.
Inside.
Oh, okay.
Food safety, yeah, but the insurance part of it.
Gotcha.
And I didn't realize, like, because...
Or like, hey, you can't operate out of your home. You have to do it out of a shared kitchen.
And also understanding, like, my insurance is higher because I'm not a retail. I'm a manufacturer. So for retail, it may have been like $240 for the year, where mine, because I'm a manufacturer, my insurance for the year is like $640, I think.
What were some other legal hurdles or business hurdles that you didn't even expect? Because like you were saying, you didn't have a business background. So was there some other things that you were just like, oh, I had no idea I was going to have to deal with X, Y, and Z.
There's so many permits. So even once again, as a food and beverage business, so you have to have your permits with the health department. So you have your peddler's license your peddler's license and your food retail permit also. So those two also have to be renewed annually. Working out of Warren, you have to have a victualling license, which is $100 a year. So there's just a bunch of little things that just add up over time. It's just mad annoying. But then also, when you do like markets out of state, you have to get like a sales permit for that state. Yeah, it's I think just even taxes. Taxes.
What comes first, the work or the business? For a lot of people out there, once they have an idea for a business or a product, they want to get to work right away and start creating or producing, and worry about the business stuff later. Now, this is not a bad approach. However, this approach may have some setbacks. Depending on what you're doing, not having your business set up properly, you could be missing out on loans, grants, access to specialized programs to help your business grow, or worst case scenario, you could be breaking the law. Amber wanted to start her business right away, but she was also aware that having the paperwork done first would be beneficial in giving her access to money in the forms of loans and grants, as well as legal protection, which is especially important as her business deals mainly in beverages. And she didn't do this alone. She took advantage of the people and resources around her that were able to help. At the end of the day, yes, you should simply just get started and get to work. But don't forget the monetary and legal advantages having your business properly set up can give you, especially when you are just getting started. Finding out these things, you're doing all these things. You're still, up until recently, I think, you were working a full-time job and doing this.
Yeah, I actually just left Brown. It's 4 months ago now. Yeah.
How did you have the energy to do all this on your own, and why? And was there a reason why you didn't try to like have friends help out, or take on a partner, or find somebody else to like just help do this?
I think for me, well, first and foremost, I wanted to make sure it was done right. And I think I was still trying to figure out a lot of things. And I think in my mind, it's like, I can't lead people when I don't know what I'm doing also. So I want to make sure, like, I have some systems in place. Like, I think for me, which is what I'm focusing on now, that is no longer, a startup business. I'm now in the growth and expansion phase. I desperately need to hire people. And so right now it's
just
really
to offload things, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So even just to like solidify systems where, because at some point, like, this is a national brand. I can do things now at the scale that I'm doing it in, but the way I'm expanding so quickly, very, very soon, I will not be able to do this on my own. And ultimately, as a business, your job as a creative, as a CEO, is to create systems so they can function without me being there.
So that way you can go and make the bigger CEO like decisions, whereas you have to don't do every little thing. Yeah.
So like even now, like there is no reason why I'm doing markets every weekend. Like, yeah, it's great people get to meet me in person, but there are a long list of things that I could and should be doing rather than standing at a market for 6 or 7 hours every Saturday and Sunday.
Speaking of markets, because one of your first pop-ups that you actually sold the teas at, because I was reading that you were like, your market research was making blends at home and you were inviting friends over, right? And they were tasting it. It's like, okay, this one works, this one doesn't, gotta modify this. And you went to this pop-up in Pawtucket and you said you made $500 and you were like, this is awesome. But then that $500 quickly went away. Can you describe that feeling a little bit of just like, oh, I made this money, and then you're like, oh, it has to go back into the business? Because I think people don't realize that at times.
Yeah. So I was living on a high for a solid 30 minutes, and then it was just like I went home and I realized like, okay, I have the website going, and so I started I launched a website on April 19th. So that's when I consider like the launch of my business. And I have, family, friends, because, I'm not from here. So everyone's from out of state, like ordering, shipping things out. But yeah, I have to buy more ingredients. I have to buy more packaging. I have to buy more labels. Shipping costs so much. But yeah, I think, early in that phase, I was able to do it. But yes, you have to recycle that revenue. And so that's why it's so important to have these injections of seed money along the way. But yeah, that little joy lasted a solid like 30 minutes, and that was
Was that the moment or was there a different moment when you realized this went from like, hey, I'm starting this business to like, this is a legitimate thing? Like, what was that moment for you? Was it there when you were making that first 500, or was there a different moment where you're like, oh, this is a thing now? Like, this is a thing that's like making money?
I think it was at that very first pop-up because one, people actually came. And two, like there was some money made. And I was like, wow, like I can actually do this. And then when it started growing a little bit more, so even like then, I did honestly my first year, I only made like 5,200 in my first year because it was from April to December. Really just getting my feet wet because I had like I said, I have no idea what I'm doing, and so a lot of it was just doing the schoolyard market at Hope in Maine that summer. Just introducing people to who I am as the owner, what the actual brand is, what my mission is, and introducing them to a new product. So it's really just that first year, really just focusing on the introduction of this new product and this new brand.
Along with the product and the brand, there's another part that we definitely need to highlight and talk about, because it's not just the Black Leaf Tea Company, it's the Black Leaf Tea Company and Culture Shop.
Yep.
And it's that last part that I'm really interested in, because you were having events and talks. How important was that part of highlighting culture? And I want to highlight a quote here, that there was a Zoom discussion, and you put this in your blog, that there's a lack of attention paid to Black-owned businesses until the death of another Black person killed by police or seeing hundreds of Black people tear gas during peaceful protests. Be as loud for us for, in the years, like when you're actually just, the business is going as you are when, like, there's controversy and things like that.
Yeah.
The reason why I wanted to highlight that quote, because I think that that's true. But also, how important was that culture? Because like some businesses, they're businesses, they're like fun ideas and people make money, and like that's perfectly fine. Like you do what you love, enjoy it, and like you're making money, great.
Yeah.
But there's a very heavy culture aspect, and you actually like, it seems like the infrastructure and the groups weren't there, and you just kind of created it yourself. Was that the reasoning, or were there other reasons as well, as like, hey, I need to highlight the culture part as well, and like really highlight it and really strongly push it?
Yeah. So for me, I can loudly and full chestedly say that I love being a Black woman. I do. And I felt like, especially as a transplant, it hurt seeing people that I know, especially the other like Black people that I knew that were like transplants also that worked at Brown, feeling like, they can't wait to leave because why would I stay when I don't see me here? And
that was the reason why I asked, like, why did you stay versus leaving?
Yeah, I think that I also have a very clear understanding that you have to create the things that you want to see. I do believe that I am a bit audacious also. So yeah, I don't have an issue creating those type of environments, but yeah, I mean, the issue was never going to go away. There's always going to be new transplants of color, Black trans professionals coming to this space because Brown is here, because CVS is here. You have Roger Williams at the med schools. Like, there's a lot of things around RISD attracting these people to the space. But it's like, how do you create, like you said, the infrastructure and the culture of wanting to get people to actually stay? So Providence doesn't have an issue of getting Black professionals here. It's oftentimes getting us to stay because where do I go? How do I find these people? How do I find these resources? And so
the lack of the groups and the lack of the infrastructure, as we were talking about before.
And so I think, of course, like the grad students, they have each other because they have them with the Black Student Union and Black Grad Student Union, stuff like that. But so referencing that quote, I actually wrote that article after George Floyd's murder, and I saw an uptick. So that's where a lot of my business growth came from, unfortunately. There's, they have the 1,000,001 list of Black businesses to support, the podcast, the magazine articles, the news articles. And I wrote that because I knew that this is what happens every time. There's an uptick of DEI performative work by these big box name, companies. There's corporate offices always want to have like,
they're using the controversy to create cash.
Yeah, between that, it's like, it's a lot of performative work. Even just the corporate like workspace. It's like, oh, we're gonna have T-shirts, or we're gonna have these talks at work about the Black experiences. It's like
why now? Why are you waiting until a tragedy happened? But
then also it's like, once the smoke clears out, you're gonna be gone. And it was absolutely right. Where even like this past year, it slowed down drastically from 2020. But I had even more sales this year because I was able to retain customers from that first big jolt of business, which of course, I'm appreciative of. And I hate that that's unfortunately where it came from. But it did put my business in view of a lot of people that were not familiar and even heard of my business because I just started the year before. And also, it's the first year of the pandemic, so people were at home. They're on their computers more than on their phone a lot more, scrolling through social media. So, in that sense, like I said, this happens all the time. And so I think that we were aware of it, but also understanding, like, people, if they don't know you're there, they don't know you're there. But at the same time, it's kind of, it's not hard to recognize performative actions. And it's like, okay, you may start this way, but maneuvering to something more genuine where it's like, I genuinely would support you, but also like, not just supporting a business because they're Black, but because they have great products. The service is amazing. I genuinely like this brand.
So you created not only your business, but you created the thing that you seem like you desperately needed when you came here, which was
community.
The community.
Yeah.
Like, you created it yourself. You're like, it's not here, I'm going to create it. And you're also doing mentoring, I think, as well. If I have that right,
kind of.
Okay, so kind of.
There's people that are always like, hey, can I have like an hour of your time? And I think that's also imperative when it comes to, for me, when I think of leadership or gaining experience, lifting as you rise should be a natural part of leadership. I think it's very weird when people want to be like the only one in the room.
So I was going to ask, like, is that something your mom taught you about being in service to people?
Yeah. So I think just that's always been my mom, the sense that, no matter how little you think that you have, you always have something to give back. It doesn't even have to be money, but time is precious. So being able to give someone your time and your presence is important. And so that's when people ask, I think it's also weird. People's like, yeah, I was a little intimidated by you. I'm like, I don't know why, but they're like, email me. It's like, hey, I saw you at the market like 3 times. And I finally got the courage to email you and just ask for help. I'm like, you could just ask me at the market. I'm not going to bite your head off. But no, people have asked us like, hey, do you mind if we schedule a Zoom time, or can we meet for lunch or something? And can I just run some questions by you? I'm like, absolutely. And so, I think also not just giving your time, but being very transparent and very honest, like in your answers, because no one's going to grow from being like, oh, I had a great experience. Like, just do this. Like, no. Tell them how hard it was.
Right. You're going to grow from the failures and the bad moments and the hardships, because you're not going to grow when everything's fine.
Exactly. And that's how I started my business too. Like, I took a lot of time just to ask people questions. And one of the questions I asked everyone is, what did you do wrong?
I was going to say, how important is it just to be willing to say, I don't know, and be willing to ask the question?
That is
I feel
exactly
like some
what
people
I'm
are
doing.
too proud to
Yes.
not even to do those things.
Yes, and that's actually exactly what I'm doing now. It's just like, once again, like, I'm fresh out of the startup phase. I'm very new to the growth phase, and I am very much aware that I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. And so I'm listening to a lot more like panel discussions and webinars. Even me going to Brooklyn this week, I'm going to Afrotech. So we met Aaron a couple weeks ago, who's the founder, one of the co-founders of Blavity and Afrotech. So hoping to meet people there that I can talk to and bounce some ideas off of. Real
quick, because I know we're coming up on time and I still have some more questions, but What is Blavity and Afrotech, just so for people that are curious, if they hear these things, they can go, I can go research that.
Yeah, so it's a Black media platform. So it's Blavity, Afrotech is of his name, is like the tech space for Black people to also have a Meta World conference coming soon also. They also have like Travel Noir, 2190, I believe. So it's a media umbrella that focuses on different aspects of like Black culture and Black life.
So you created this community space. You have this business that has like a social aspect, a conscious aspect as well. That seems to be very you, as far as like you being the brand. Whereas sometimes there's like brands, like larger companies, it's not like a person, but it seems like you and the brand are intertwined. I heard there was an interview that you did where I thought this was an interesting thing that I saw that you went through, which was when you were selling the teas, you noticed that the people in the audience buying them were older white women.
Yeah.
And you had to tweak your branding a little bit.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, you didn't have to tweak your branding. No. Okay, so you didn't tweak it at all.
Not at all.
Oh, okay. Was that like a surprise, or was that expected?
I don't know why I thought it wouldn't be. It's Rhode Island. I don't know why it would not have been. But in my mind, because like I'm Black, I'm creating this space for Black people with the Young Black Professionals events and even the Tea Talks also. So these are conversations that initially I had in person pre-pandemic, and it was a Black only space. But even then, learning that transparency and authenticity goes a very long way when building your brand. Because first and foremost, as people, as consumers, we read BS easily. And so I think that you don't need to lie about who you are, what you stand for. If people like it, they like it. If they don't, then that's also okay. But people were very excited that I was creating this space for people that look like me. And even that, once again, the market was at Hope and Main. So this is Warren. So it's more of a wider area. But even then they were like, we love this. Like, they tasted the tea. They love the tea also. So like I said, once again, my business's name is long. It's a little lengthy, a mouthful, but it truly does encompass all that I do.
Do you think people get sometimes, especially if they're starting a business, because it seems like you've mastered the art of the pivot, just from talking to you, and also recognizing signs of when to pivot.
Yeah.
And like your decision of like when to scale, and that you're scaling up quickly, and now you're recognizing that you have to, you have to offload things and hire some people, right? Do you, and like you saw that, I thought you changed your branding, you didn't, which is great. You didn't change your branding, even though like the audience you got versus the audience you thought you were going to get was a little bit different. I could see that. I could see somebody reacting to that very differently. How important do you think it is to not be stubborn, to like, hey, I have this vision for the business. It's going to be this. I am not going to deter from it. And I feel like that's why some businesses fail, is that they have a thing in their mind and they're not seeing like what is the money maker, what the audience is, or like who's actually buying it. And people don't want it. They have the blinders on. And it seems like you definitely don't have that problem. Like, you're willing to take in that information and not be stubborn. Why do you think that is? And why do you think that that's important? Because I feel like some people miss that mark completely.
I think for me, it was important because I am, once again, shout out to my therapist. I've had to learn to relinquish control, or needing control over everything in my life. Also understanding that your business is its own organism. It is going to organically go in whatever direction it is supposed to go. Now, I think it's great to have an idea of what you would want to do or how you visualize it, but it's not going to go exactly as you plan. And sometimes it can go completely left. Now, the question is, are you willing to lose your business because you refuse to go where it is naturally and organically going? Because if you say, oh, I want to sell red t-shirts, but everyone keeps asking for blue t-shirts, but like, no, I make red t-shirts, but they're asking for blue, and it's not a hard pivot to do blue. Yeah. Are you just going to stick with red because you visualize
you're stubborn
red?
And like that's what you want.
But I think once again, you have to learn to relinquish control, but also being able. You can still maintain a ground mission, but if your business is moving a different way, then you got to move. So even like now, like I'm looking to pivot into the bottled iced tea space, because even now understanding. Everyone doesn't drink hot tea. They have a high visual, like, because of the name. I don't drink hot tea, but like, 85% of all Americans drink iced tea. Period. So it's like, okay, if I can create, now I have a product. I don't have to spend more money on extra stuff because I'm going to use my own tea blends, herbal blends that I have. I just need to pivot to the actually bottle, finding a distributor, a manufacturer, because of course, bottling very like lava hot liquid by yourself is not safe. So but once again, like organically seeing like where things are going, being aware of industry trends is also very important, where what you're doing at the time may be great for you, but if this is where the industry is, you need to be aware of that also. But it's really just a sense of understanding that if you do not pivot, your great idea can and will run away from you, and you're going to be left with nothing.
2 more questions.
Yep.
I want to be respectful of your time.
I have plenty of time. You're good.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, all right. Still 2 more questions either way. Speaking of, staying true to your brand, but then recognizing signs and pivoting, your first wholesale, because I noticed you have a number of wholesalers and businesses that, sell your product, which is great. Can you talk about getting your first wholesale deal? Because that was with Stock Culinary Goods, and I heard you were ready to quit. Like, you were ready to dissolve the business.
Okay, so this is literally what happened. So I left work at Brown. I got in my car. My friend Chase, he had just called us to check and see how I was doing because I don't think we talked in a while. And I told him, I was like, yeah, I think I'm done. He's like, why would you do this? Like, it's a lot of money that I don't have. It's time consuming. My job is really consuming also. It's just like, you know what? But this is also like October. I started my business in April. So this is like
April of 2019, I think.
Yeah. So this is that October. I'm just like, I'm not scared that it's hard. It's just it's a lot of money. It's a lot of time. I think it has started slowing down a little bit. And I am in my car like fighting bacteria because I have to drive home. And I know when I cry, I get terrible headaches when I cry. And so
this is also a business you're running while you're putting in a full like day, probably longer than 8 hours, it seems, doing your normal day job that you were not enjoying.
Nope. And so it's just like peak frustration. I'm also like, once again, like I'm not being paid, and that too. So also understanding like even now, my business will be 3 years old next month. I've never paid myself for my business. So even now, like the idea I could create more revenue for myself or income for myself is just like, where and how. But actually, I'm going to be paying myself the first time this month. So I'm excited about it. But no, with that conversation with Chase, it was a Monday. It was literally a Monday, and I'm in my car just frustrated and tired. Just like, I don't think I can keep going with this. And that Wednesday, Jan from Stock Culinary Good emails me. He's like, hey, I've followed your Instagram since you started. I love your content. I love seeing your success. Have you started wholesaling? Would you like to start here? And I was just like bawling, crying. Like, I would love to. Thank you so much. Because I was done. I was done. And I've told her this story too. Just like literally cried to my friend Chase on Monday, and she emailed me on Wednesday. It's just like, I don't think I ever expected like instant success, but I was very confident. I knew that I had something that could be big. I knew I had a great product. I was very confident in the brand and the space that I was also creating along with my business. It was very frustrating doing so, but also being miserable at work.
And then speaking of that, so you had that, all right, I lied. It's not 2 questions, but it's probably a little bit more than 2 questions. But speaking of that, so you took that first wholesale deal, right? And then you got more, and you had like places that you were working with that are selling your tea. But then I've heard that there were other people that wanted to do wholesale deals where they wanted like 50% of like, what was it, like the business? There's something like some crazy amount, not
none
stock,
that I work with now,
but like some crazy terms.
So basically, when you do wholesales, you decide your profit margin. So basically, as a wholesale, I give you a discount.
Yeah.
But it does be profitable for me and you at the same time because, of course, you're going to buy it at this wholesale price,
and then you're going to flip it for a profit.
You're going to sell
on your end.
My MSRP. So MSRP is a retail price. So what you see on my website, the basic price for the public.
Yep.
That's the retail price. So you're going to get it at a discount, but you're going to make a profit by selling it at a suggested MSRP. But I remember I was working at a market at Hope in Maine, and it was actually weird because her husband was super excited about it. She was really snooty, and I did not like her out the back anyways. But he was like, hey, my wife. So he instructed her. It's like, hey, we have a shop. I forgot where. He instructed her, like, hey, get her a card, and email her. And she's kind of like, well, here, fine, whatever. I really was not feeling her at all. So that also for me, like my wholesales are partnerships. I do not like just giving you a box of tea and just be like have at it.
Well, I think that's a bigger question besides the profit thing, which I want you to go into. But like, because I think especially if you're in a place where, like you said, you haven't paid yourself until recently, some people are like, let me just say yes to every deal because of money and profit.
No. And
you're willing to say no. How important is it to be willing to say no? And then how do you evaluate, besides money, you see as a partnership, how do you evaluate your partnerships? Because I think that's a really good point you're making, that you have to be willing to say no.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't take on every partnership. But how do you evaluate, this partnership's a good fit versus not a good fit?
Yeah. So all offers are not good offers. All money is not good money. So first and foremost, it's like a romantic relationship. Do I want to wake up to you every morning? How much do you get on my nerves? Are you going to be texting me, emailing me every other day? Like things like that. So basically understanding, like, one, how respectful of you are my time in my product and the space that I've created. 1, 2, because there's a social aspect to my business. Do we align in that way also? And I would say for all the ones that I work with, we do. So they don't all have like a social impact piece to their businesses, but that is also important to them. And that's important to me. Also, of course, the financial side. So making sure that, you know, for them, that the deal that we have makes sense for both parties. So even like now, I'm prepping for my first trade show. It's in a week and a half. It's a smaller scale one. It's the Rhode Island Tabletop Show on April. Yeah, could be wrong. But even then, just like, you know, making my price sheet, it's the 5th. So saying like, hey, because currently I sell like on a scale per package, but like, no, we're going to switch to cases. So you have to buy a certain number of cases. So like the case of 10, if you buy 1 to 10 cases, it's a 30% profit margins. Anything from, let's say 6 cases or more, 35%. So even then it's just like, you know, you're making good money, but it has to make sense for both parties also. So they can say no to me, but that also has to be fine because it's business. It's not personal at all. I think that sounds very cliche, but it is not personal. It's business.
How do you evaluate and decide what the next steps are? Like you said, you're scaling up, and you know, you were talking about like you hit a certain number, and now you're like, I have to, you know, hire and offload. Because I think knowing when to scale, not just like, hey, we're going to scale, but like knowing when to scale and the timing of knowing when to scale is super important. I think that there are businesses out there, they scale too early and then they can't sustain it, and then the whole business goes under. So like, how do you, like, what is important to you to like, yeah, this is the time to scale and do these things rather than not?
It's a sense that you'll know. So, I know for me, well, first and foremost, if you are in a financial situation where you're able to do so. So I did my first small rebranding while I was still at Brown because, you know, no matter what happens, I have a check coming regardless, so I'm good. And so we did the tablecloth, the boxes, and the regular size packaging. So I think from there, it's just like, okay, my brand is getting bigger, but also I'm doing wholesale. So now I have to consider curb appeal. If someone like walks by, they're going to stop and like, ooh, what's that? I think that some customers, they may ask for it. So you start listening to what people are saying when you ask or they give reviews. I think listening to customers is imperative because they're the ones actually buying from you. Ultimately, you'll just know when you start feeling more like you're in a corner and it's like, I have to figure something out. But I think financially it is, also it's not easy. I understand that also. So even like now, like in this entire pandemic, I've only had one grant for $1,000, which for me does not go very far. And so I was like, okay, the grant route is not working for me. But once again, my business, I can feel it starting to run away from me. And I cannot lose my business because I don't have the resources to fund it. So I was like, you know what? I have good credit. At some point, I'm going to have to create or establish business credit anyway. So I just went and got a business credit card. And the one that I got is a really, really good one. And I get a lot of points for travel. So once again, be able to actually go to places.
What is that business credit card in case people want to be like, oh, it's a good one. I need to go get it.
I got the Amex Business Platinum.
There you go, everybody. Amex Business Platinum card.
But I got it specifically because I left my job at Brown in December. December 3rd is my last day. But I also wanted to be able to go and travel to LA where like I said, I've only not sold in like 3 states, I believe. But I sell a lot in California. So being able to go to retailers and Cali restaurants, cafes, whatever, and meet with them in person, do in-person tea tastings, and hopefully come out with another deal of another wholesale. So that was my priority. But I also get 5 times the points for flights. I get points on literally everything. I just did my first purchase on Amazon with my points from my car. I like, oh, I don't have to pay for things. And I've been learning from other entrepreneurs. Like this one guy talked about how he has not paid for a hotel in 6 years because he has so many points from his Amex card. I was like, it makes sense. So you do have to spend a bit, but I spend a lot anyways because I'm constantly buying packaging, which is not cheap, ingredients, just things I needed to do for the immediate need of my business. So upgrading my minis to match the regular size because of the trade show coming, I can't have mismatched packaging. So It's you kind of have to like rise to the occasion and make things work. Unfortunately, I've heard of some people having like, they're like, we have we have a lot of credit card debt, but even for me, that kind of scared me because I don't have, the only debt I have is my student loans from grad school. So like credit loan, like absolutely not. But even though, once again, like, yes, like learning when to pivot and learning when to scale. When the demand is there for you to scale is when you actually scale.
We're actually at the final two questions, so
okay.
Not lying this time. What do you think that there are hidden things, either with business or your business in particular, that the public doesn't see that you wish they did see?
First and foremost, it is just me. There is no team. When I say we accidentally, I mean I. Every single pack of tea is blended by hand by me. I don't have the equipment to pack by a distributor because the one that as Hope and Main doesn't really work for my products. So I'm still packing like teaspoon by teaspoon by hand, thousands upon thousands of packs of tea by myself. I think one thing also is just like, once again, being very new to the growth phase, and I'm like no longer in the startup phase. No one talks about the amount of capital required for this. Like, I am shitty about it. Like this is expensive. Like, to grow and scale it to the level of a growth phase business, and to do so without any kind of seed money. Greg said the grant route hasn't been working, so just like having to do a lot by myself. I don't think people speak enough about the holistic side and have the emotional strain of doing these kinds of things. Growing a national brand by yourself is very hard. I think that's it. I think a lot of times social media kind of downplays, like, people think, okay, just started, LLC Twitter.
And now I'm going to be on a beach somewhere.
Right. Like, oh, we'll just create a product or some kind of training.
Oh, I'll drop
whatever.
ship or,
Yeah, this is a lot of work. And I think that it's a lot of work. People, email. I'm not Amazon. I don't have a customer service team. I don't have a fleet of planes and things to get you there in time. Also, I'm a person. I would say I had a mini mental breakdown last week and I cried a lot and I did nothing. So there are some orders that got out late because mentally I was not in a well space. Like, my friends finally asked me last week. It's just like, to be clear, like, I am not well. And that's something that I had to come to terms with. It's emotionally a lot. So even now, like, considering going back to therapy again after like a year and a half.
Because there's sacrifices you have to make if you want these kind of businesses that I feel like people don't see. It's like, hey, you're going to have less social time. You're going to have like less of this if you want this to work.
Yeah, it's a lot at one time. So even just like jumping ship from Brown and doing this independently, like I said, for me, I come from the hood. And so for me, I've always had a fear. Like, I've never been like completely poor, but I've come close. And I have a very clear memory of how I was, and it scares me. And so even the possibility of getting back there scares the shit out of me. So like, things are kind of slow. They're not going so well in the moment. It's very hard to get out of the mindset. It's like, I cannot crash and burn, but it's also just me. So what are you going to do? And so I think even then, taking that time last week to get myself together, we're back now. It's just like, all right, we're trying to get back to it. But the thing is, like, I have individual sales have been down, but my wholesale inquiries have skyrocketed. It was like, you have to get these things done. So it's like, I think acknowledging the human part behind these small businesses, because oftentimes there's either one of us, maybe two, but these are individual people. This is not a system. This is not a machine running behind this business. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that, these are people, the same way that you may have a not so great day or week, so do I. Unfortunately, there's not an entire company on your back, and you can do that. I cannot, and I'm gonna get, I think I haven't had any emails yet. It's like people like, hey, where's my package? I haven't had that yet, thankfully, but it's some packages that came out late last week because I just mentally was not in a good space.
What does the future hold for your business? Mm-hmm. What are some of your future goals? What are you trying to do? And what advice would you have for creatives and the next entrepreneurs that are out there listening to this?
Next up, I think like I said, my main focus right now is, I need to start fundraising very, very soon, just because once again, I need to hire staff. The things that I'm trying to do as far as scaling up again, looking to do more wholesales. So starting to fundraise. I would like to start international shipping within this year also, because I realized from my analytics on my website, I get a lot of hits from, of course, like the UK, Italy, the Middle East, a lot of Canadians also. So, there's money being left on the table. So I need to pick that up also. But yeah, my goal is to continue to grow as a national brand. I hopefully will be hitting my first 6 figures this year as a business. So once again, being able to comfortably pay myself, pay a staff. And for me, it's not just paying a staff. I'm excited to actually develop a staff. So I can start you up as okay, you may come in at an operations assistant. I get to grow you to a director of ops. Those things I'm really excited about. But yeah, I think for me, it's just to continue to grow the marketing side, continue to scale. I would love to finally venture into getting an investor partnership once again. So I want someone that's invested in not just the money part, but growing my business and also growing me as the business owner. And as far as the advice for new creatives and entrepreneurs, take your time. There's no need to be, rushing and you rush into a brick wall. Just taking your time, asking the questions. Once again, from this whole conversation, not being afraid to pivot, I think it's essential. It's imperative. You have to move around. I think, if you sit in the same space, there is no growth there. I think also the people around you, even myself, I know I need to be around more entrepreneurs, not just entrepreneurs. I desperately want to be around people that are doing better than me. So like I said, I'm taking the time now to do a lot of learning because the space is as a growing and expansion phase. This is new to me. Yeah, I want to be around people that are just I went through this also, but not just people that are already going through it as well, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. With that, we're at the end. And stole this tradition from Hot Ones. I've said it before and I'll say it again, but we didn't have to eat any wings. These last moments, no questions. Just say whatever you want to say, promote whatever you want to promote. Go for it.
Cool. Thank you. So you can shop online at theblackleaftea.com. The is included. So it's theblackleaftea.com. I also just started a new feature. It's called TBL Tuesday. So community is a text feature. So you just text the number 401-399-4048 and you get to join my community and you'll get a freebie or discount every single Tuesday. Yeah, and also keep an eye out. So I'm actually bringing on someone's volunteering to come become my new assistant culture curator. So Melaine will be helping me coordinate the future Young Black Professionals events. Like I said, the Tea Talks will be coming as a podcast sometime very soon. But yeah, so basically, if you want to support my business, other small businesses, Black-owned businesses, the best way to do it is to buy things first and foremost. And if you are not in a position to buy, if you don't like the product, I'm sure you have a friend or somebody drinks tea. Give it as a gift. Promote to other podcasts, other bars, hotels, restaurants you go to. Say, hey, I want this tea here. Maybe reach out to Amber. Here's her website. But yeah, there's other ways to promote us other than buying. So of course, sharing a tweet or sharing a photo or a reel on Instagram, whatever. So I think also word of mouth is strong. So if you can tell people about the brand, other restaurants, other businesses as well, that'd be great too. Keep an eye out for burgers, brews, and bourbon as well.
Yeah, it's gonna be the Bob's Burgers podcast. Anybody who's listened to this podcast, please hold us to this because hold us accountable for this because I want this to be a thing now.
I do too.
And if a year from now we don't start it, I want people being mad. Where's my Triple B podcast?
I feel like it'll be phenomenal.
Well, with that, everybody, new podcast to look forward to alongside this one and alongside the one Amber's going to start.
Yeah, Triple B. So basically my podcast is called The Culture Shop. So along with the name. So basically I would have the Tea Talks are just open roundtable conversations discussing anything from cultural events, current events, just, dating, sex, relationships, anything that affects us on a day-to-day basis. And the great thing is I have a lot of friends that are experts at what they do. So I get to, once again, just create a platform to amplify Black voices in general, where I don't have to be on the podcast all the time. I can give them my platform and they can talk instead of me.
Except for Bob's Burgers, because that's going to be a
Except that one, because we're not doing that. That's my thing.
Yeah. Well, our thing.
Yes.
We're starting that.
I'm excited.
Unless you want to steal it and take it, feel free.
No, I love the Triple B. We're going to, man, I can see the t-shirts now. The stickers, the bumpers, all of it. I want the Instagram page. Because honestly, yes. Because there's a lot of, ooh, yeah.
Trademark. I'm just going to keep saying that so nobody else doesn't steal this idea. For the love of God. And with that, everybody, I think that's it.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everybody. And that's it for this episode of the Creative Capital Show. Thank you for listening, and a special thanks goes to this episode's guest, Amber Jackson. The Creative Capital Show is hosted, recorded, edited, mixed, and produced by me, Jason Sylvia. You can listen to the Creative Capital Show over at our website, creativecapitalshow.com. We're also available on Anchor FM, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast hosting platforms. If you like the show, please subscribe. Helps the show out a lot. And be sure to follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the show, and until next time, keep on creating.